Drivers Mate Podcast, thank you for tuning in, back with another one. Also check out my main channel at CNCCMI, right? You can reach me on all socials, and like I always ask, please like, subscribe and share. It helps with the algorithm, and it not only helps me, it helps other content creators like me, real people doing real things, keeping freedom of speech free, permeating your internet, permeating your browser, keeping you entertained and educated, right? So thank you for your time, I always appreciate it, right? So today I'm going to do another reaction style video, and what I usually do in these types of videos is I pick a YouTube short at random, you get my initial reaction, then I give an opinion if I have one to give. Right, let's go.
But you know what I want to know? How you feel about reparations, huh? Well, I guess you think that she feel good about it because she probably got some soul polling, probably got some little mixed cheering. And I guess if one of the kids is FBA, half FBA, then would you look at that?
FBA is Foundational Black American.
But I'm going to go ahead and play this again for all of the late ones coming in. But you know what I want to know? How you feel about reparations, huh?
Oh, no.
Well, I guess you think that she...
Well, I can't see the whole video. It looks like he's reacting to a video and a commentary about it. But what is my opinion about reparations? Right. So, reparations, a very politically poignant thing at the moment, right? And for good reason, because some people are arguing for it and some people are arguing against it. But let's keep in mind, people have been arguing for making cases and even formulating ways of accumulating reparations for hundreds of years now, right? So it's not a recent thing to the 2000s. It's not. You'd be silly to think that, right? Because the foundation of reparations is based on historical events, right? So without getting too deep in history, because I am not a historian and I don't have all the back data and all the information that would be necessary to form a real concentrated opinion, right? I know I say concentrated. When I say concentrated, I mean very much so bringing in all my sources and giving you a solid point of view. So for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to give my opinion on it, right, from a very shallow place. So, what is a reparation? If you're watching and you're wondering, what the hell is a reparation? Why do I keep hearing about it? Basically, a reparation is, without getting the actual definition, a reparation is the payment for work or crimes against a person or individual or group of people done in the past, right? So let's just think about it like this. If you go to work every day and you do your work and you don't get paid for your work, you deserve some kind of compensation at some point in the future for the hours that you've done, right? Now, of course, for the average person, it's like, well, who done work? Why didn't they get paid? Great, glad you asked. Okay, so as we know, foundationally, not only in America, because this seems to be the illusion that everybody is under, that slavery only existed in America, right? And a secondary illusion that everyone is under, slavery only happened to black people. It's incorrect, right? The original slave trade, the idea of slavery, was not racial. It had nothing to do with race. It simply had to do with conquering lands and controlling and, let's say, working the land and building societies, right? So armies from Europe, armies from Asia, armies from Africa would all go to different places, conquer, and then they would either buy or sell, trade in people, right? They were trading in humans. Although it's highly negative and highly bad, right? The initial idea was that humans were just as much as a commodity as gold in those days, right? But although slavery is very barbaric, right? The further de-evolution of slavery or degradation of this idea of trading in human resources, right, came down to a race thing in more recent history, right? So more recent history is your 1700s, 1600s up till now, right? I know I'm not a historian, I'm just giving you a broad point of view. So even though there was certain racial aspects, because you can go back and read Greeks describing their encounters with Africans, and Africans encountering Asians, and Asians and Arabs encountering Africans and Europeans, right? There's historical accounts of all of these things, right? And they describe each other using the languages they use, right? And then the etymology of that language cascades into the future to the words we kind of use now, right? Some of them being negative and some of them just being adjectives, if I can say that, just descriptive words, okay? So from that, without being too partial about the racial aspect of it, we fast forward into the latter years of slavery, right? Where it became a more of a racial foundation, where people seem to believe it ceased to exist in Europe and it ceased to exist in Asia or Arabia, right? The different sectors of Asia and Africa, right? It didn't, right? It did continue. But it was most prominent and most documented in American history, which America is a very recent country in our history, right? Sorry, a recent continent, right? So that's why their history, their issues are very much on the world stage in view today, right? Because they haven't got the historical timeline enough. Some historians will disagree that they can bury these events in their past more, right? Because it's very much recent in their history, right? Just as much recent as it is in Europe, right? And I keep making you understand this because more and more historians are being able to be open and forthright with the truth about what actually took place, right? So anyway, back down to the main point at hand, reparations. Now, like I just simplified it, I would say to you, right, from a British point of view, some point in history, people were perceived as peasants, right? And no individual could own land. All land belonged to the king, right? And the king represents God on earth. So you could plough the land, mine the land, do whatever it is you do on the land, but you would have the understanding that this is the king's land, right? Now, through time, people got their rights, and there's a whole set of philosophy and law and history on how rights came about, right? You can go find out for yourself if you care. But from that point of view, you would understand that, all right, generations of us have worked this land, right? So we have some claim to this land now, and our family names are not only just our family names represent the crafts and the things that we've done, right? So that is that. Then you would say, okay, so we've worked for 100 years on this land, right? And all of the proceeds that we've worked for have gone to the king, right? They've gone to the slave master, and we have nothing to show for it now, right? Thousands of hours of millions of hours of man hours, right? And man-powered work, only just to be given food and shelter. In some instances, not even that. We deserve compensation. Now, a way to look at this from another point of view is some of the mining incidents in America and in the early 18th century and 19th century, right? Some places had a whole like a false, or what do they call it? A fiat currency set up, a micro economy, right? Where they would get miners to work in mines, but they would pay these miners with fake money, right? Money that could only be used in the compound and the confines of that mining town, right? So all of your bars, all of your clothes makers, all of your food shops, all deal with that currency in that place, right? Now, thinking about it, there would be nothing wrong with that if that currency was actually based on something like the original idea of money being in a placeholder for gold or valuable actual material stockpiles, right? But the money that we have now and the mining money that we had then is fiat currency, right? It's not based on actual physical gold or actual physical assets. It's just a promissory note that you do this, I will do this. This piece of paper promises us that we trade, right? That's all it is. So, from that perspective, when the miners were given that money, they realized, hey, this money is worth nothing in the real world, right? We can't do anything with this. We can't afford to live outside of this mining place that we set up. Now, although you could say, hey, the owners of the mine are giving you food, clothes and shelter to work in the mine, you're not actually being compensated for your efforts, because you can't exist outside of the mine, which is our mine anyway, right? So technically that is slavery, and that is how you can look at slavery from a pragmatic view. When you take away the ultra violence of slavery, right, and the racial aspect of slavery, you can look at it like that, right? Slavery was a form of economic, right? It was economics. It was a form of commerce, right? And it paid for that free labor. Those hundreds of years of free labor paid for the ability to build up a country, right? To actually build a country fast, right? In its resources, and allow it to trade with other countries and other continents. But it's all off the back of free labor, right? So like we just said, if you were in a miner situation or you were in a peasantry situation, you can understand that at some point in time we should be compensated for our work, right? So that is where you get the argument of reparations. And like I said, it's a very surface level viewpoint I'm giving you, because I don't know all the ins and outs, and even if I did, it wouldn't make sense to go into it too much, as I don't have the credentials or the backing to actually affect any real change, right? So I'm just enlightening you or making you aware of what it is and why it's a controversial topic. So you understand now, reparations is the compensation for past works, and your dad's works, your granddad's works, his great-granddad, all of these unpaid, exploited people need their return on their work, right? They need their ROI, return on investment. So you come up to today and you say, all right, now that you as a government, as a state, as a continent, as a people, as a kingdom, have acknowledged that what you've done in the past was wrong, right? And you built all of this on free labor and ultra violence, you must now make amends, right? Just like in modern day, if a man does a crime, he must answer for a crime, right? It's as simple as that. Reparations is that argument. But of course, you can't criminalize a whole structure, right? You can't criminalize a whole country that is built on barbarity and ultra violence, right? It's too much litigation, it's too much for and against arguments to go through, right? So let's just look at it from a financial perspective. An argument a country will give you, or a continent will give you, is, hey, we cannot afford this. But it's a lie, right? Because all of that work that was built up on free labor is still there. That worth, that money, that infrastructure is still there, so you can afford it. There's an argument to say that all of this money we owe other countries for borrowing and that is nonsense, because it's all fiat currency. But then there's also an against argument. Why should we as a new generation answer for the crimes of our grandparents and their grandparents when we have nothing to do with it? Aha! But although you physically have nothing to do with it, you benefit from the crimes and the profit gained from this free labor, okay? So you must understand that your society is built off this free labor. Your financial institutions are built from this free labor. So you should be giving back to who built it, right? Of course, you can't go and make everybody a millionaire in your country, because that will just devalue the actual point of having money in your country, right? So this is the point where we're at in history now. We know reparations is the right thing to do, but the question now is how we go about doing that, right? So that's the formatted argument that most people are standing on, the platform of those arguing for it and those arguing against it, right? It's the how, right? Because now we've established it's right because of historical evidential facts, right? So now is the argument of how. Anyway, all of that longness, that is what reparations is. In my opinion, yes, reparations should be given, but we need to think about how. That's all I can say about that at this point in time in history, okay? Individuals as a race and as a family name and just through and through and through. There's so many things to consider when you talk about reparations, but there are also examples in the world where reparation systems have been established and they work quite well, right? The Jews are getting recompensated for the things that happened during Germany, so on, right? There's other examples of that. So it's possible. It can be done, right? Through litigation, some people might decide to go and sue, and it's possible, and there have been some cases where it's been successful. Just like the natives, and I won't say native Indians because that's a whole nother historical inaccuracy. The natives of a country can actually take back what's rightfully theirs and can actually request that dividends be paid based on past labour, okay? So there's examples of it working, but as a mass, that's what we're in the process of figuring out, okay? So that's my 2 cents on that. You let me know what you think in the comments. Is it right? Is it wrong? Do you have more information on it than me? Please share. I would love to know. Remember, check out my other videos in the podcast playlist. They're not all this serious. Some are lighthearted and jokes and just entertainment, right? But I hope I was able to enlighten you a little bit and educate you on the topic from a very surface level. And if it interests you, go find out more about it. Deal with people who really know what they're talking about, right? So thank you for your time. Check out my main channel, CNCCMI. Reach me on all social media platforms. Sign up to the Patreon and check the next video, right? Drivers Mate Podcast. Thank you for your time. I'll see you later.